Go. Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it just another 30 seconds to make sure everyone is in the room. All right. How about if we all get started? Welcome to Multiplying Universal Access to Play-Based Early Math Curriculum. Just a quick introduction. I'm Kevin Schaefer. I'm the Director of Inclusive Practices for the El Dorado County Office of Ed version of the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project. And this is my picture as a kindergartner. And I was that kid. I was that kid that before the first picture day, cut my hair, knocked out a couple teeth. And I think what brings me to this work is that I was also an early ed student with an IEP in a segregated setting that really impacted me in such a way that I still continue this work to support students and families with disabilities to ensure that they have inclusive, equitable opportunities from our most earliest ages in the educational system. So I'll turn it over to Heather for a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Snipes. I'm a program support specialist with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project out of El Dorado County Office of Education. And you can see me here on the screen. I was a 49ers fan from the beginning. I know there's a lot of hype around the Chiefs right now, but I got to stay faithful. I come to this work probably because I didn't get to go to preschool. And so I just decided to spend my whole life in preschool. And I love it. And I love talking about inclusion. And I love that we're here with you all tonight. So please be active in the chat. We will hopefully have time to answer questions, but we're just excited to have you all here with us, and we'll get going with our presentation.
So if you're not familiar with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project, we're funded by the California Department of Education, and we work with school districts and programs, county offices across California. And our focus for the project is to ensure students with disabilities have inclusive, equitable opportunities that are rooted in belonging, community, and relationships from the earliest ages. And we work with school districts from a focus on preschool all the way up through adult transition programs. So we're comprehensive in the support that we provide. So much is happening with early education, specifically UPK, that a lot of our work has shifted to ensure that at the earliest ages, our most vulnerable students are provided that equitable, accessible education, which begins with everyone on this call. The other area that we focus on is to provide resources. So you can go to our website and you can access any of the resources that we have available. We have inclusion research, we have archived recordings with Padlets of resources, and a lot of our resources focus around early education. So the other component of tonight is that we've created a Padlet of resources, the QR code that you can use to take a snapshot with your phone, and it'll take you directly to the Padlet, or the link is below where you can access all of the resources. And if you've never used a Padlet before, it's just like a board of resources. So you can click on the slides that we're using tonight and you can access the presentation. You can click on any of the videos, any of the resources, any of the websites, and you can download them onto your computer and have access to all of the resources on our website or even the Padlet. And you can see that the Padlet of resources that we've curated are specific to tonight's presentation, which is in the far left column, session resources. You can also access any of the inclusion resources from our website or the Padlet that are specific to preschool, universal pre-K, early education in that second column. And then part of our presentation tonight will just give you a little overview of Universal Design for Learning. And if you're not familiar with Universal Design for Learning, this is actually the area in early learning that is most requested for professional development. It's Universal Design for Learning so that all students have access to high quality instruction and resources that we provide in our programs so that all students, regardless of disability, regardless of behavior, regardless of student approaches to learning, will have access in the way we design our environments and our lesson plans. And then specific to early math resources in that fourth column, there are resources that you can access that are specific to early math. Even though we have a very short time with you today, we wanted to make sure that you had access to these resources, and the Padlet will never go away. So I would highly recommend that you visit our website and the Padlet so that you can continue to explore some of the really most amazing resources. Next slide. So I loved that Megan addressed various ways for designing our environments and our instruction and our lesson plans so that everyone has access. And regardless of how they enter the space, we are providing ways in which students can develop their math concepts from where they are to close that instructional gap so that all students are moving forward in their learning around math. And one of the questions that we get asked most often is, what does the research say about inclusion? Truly, when we create environments that include belonging and community and relationships and connected to typically developing peers, we are providing environments that support students in being successful at the preschool level, the early learning level, all the way through to post-secondary opportunities. So just a couple points from the research that you can also draw from our website is that children develop at a young age the skills, behaviors, and dispositions that are foundational as they transition to later learning. And what that means is the skills that you are developing, even through play, are actually supporting students in developing college and career skills that will support them in being successful to all of the opportunities that will be available to them. They are more social. They develop their play skills. They have developmental gains. There's peer acceptance. And I want to focus on this piece of research because it's really important that when we include students in all subjects, including math, when we include them, they have a connection to their peers. And what we're creating is allies at a very young age, because now they have a connection to an individual of 4, of 5, of 6 years old, that they will become lifelong allies and create entire communities that are inclusive. There's increased language. There's improved attitudes. And when we say improved attitudes about children with disabilities, what we're talking about is students, of course, but also adults. And we have to self-reflect on our own implicit biases of disability and whether we approach it from an asset-based perspective or a deficit-based perspective. So that's really the starting point to creating inclusive environments, is to self-reflect on our own thoughts and opinions around disability. which requires us to shift mindsets. We have to believe that students with disabilities are general education students first. They belong in that least restrictive environment, and they access high quality instruction, high quality environments, high quality standards that are available to all students. So when we segregate students with disabilities, we're actually segregating them for the rest of their educational career into their post-secondary opportunities and lack thereof. So special education is not a place, but services and supports delivered in a particular setting. And this is a common misunderstanding that special education, it happens over there. It's actually a service and a support that can be delivered in a general education setting that allows for that continued access to typically developing students. And we have to ask ourselves, do our programs and decision making align with post-secondary options for students with disabilities, even at the preschool level? Self-reflect on whether or not the instruction, the math instruction that we provide, the English language arts instruction we provide, the play opportunities, the connections with typically developing students, do those opportunities directly relate to post-secondary opportunities for students after they leave our system? Special education law states that students should be learning with their typically developing peers to the greatest extent possible. They have to have access. In order to be successful, we can't create uh, inauthentic environments, but those environments, even at preschool, in math instruction, have to reflect exactly what students will experience and teach the skills that they're going to need to be successful. And then also considering presumptions and generalities regarding disabilities create lifelong lasting barriers. My greatest recommendation would be do research, study disability. What does it mean? How does it positively impact our general education environments? And if you have questions, you can go to our website and you can reach out to us and we'll support in any way. So we go back to this belief impact cycle. This is where the participation, the recognizing of brilliance that Megan talked about, this is where we have to self-reflect on our own belief system about students and what they're capable of and keeping those high standards. So addressing the teacher beliefs about students, and that leads to teachers' actions towards students, which then impacts the student's belief about their own capabilities. And that's a critical component of this process, is that how we use our language, how we act towards students with disabilities is really impacting their own self-perception of their ability and their place in our system, which then leads to student actions in school and life. And this is where we have some um, behavior issues that we have to address. It might not be that the student isn't able to behave. They may not just have the connection or feel a sense of belonging within the educational system. And then finally, students' outcomes in school and life. So even at the early education level, we have to think with the end in mind and say that these are the options for students. We have to make sure that we're providing that same level of connection and belonging and relationship in our preschool and our early ed programs. Which goes back to language. Our language influences our culture, which then there's a trickle down effect to families and whether or not families belong and whether or not students belong. So we can reframe our language from using negative or deficit based language into more asset based or positive language. So going from stubborn, students might be considered stubborn in that they don't want to do a math problem, for example, or participate in a math lesson. Move that language from stubborn, they're just persistent. They understand exactly what they want and they are persistent in pursuing it. Move from fussy, change that over to selective. From loud, they're very expressive. from bossy to a leader, wild to energetic. And enter in the chat, what can you add to your positive reframing word bank? Give us some examples of words that are deficit based and words that are more asset based or positive in a sense. See if we can come up with some. Do we have any in the chat, Carolyn? Not yet. Okay. So if you think of some, put them in the chat. So one of our favorite graphics, see a child differently and you see a different child. So reframe the perspective of behavior, and behavior is really one of the biggest barriers to math instruction, where students refuse or don't feel like they have the abilities. Move from I won't to a student says I can't yet. And it's the adult's mindset that shapes the view of the child and then influences our thoughts. He's lazy. She just wants attention. Move from that perspective to what's getting in their way. What barriers can we identify and mitigate, which then influences our response, which then impacts the child's experience, either positively or negatively.
Kevin, we've got some responses in the chat now. And Kelly says, too quiet. A child that's too quiet is just thoughtful.
That's good.
And we can change picky to sensitive. And I really like that, Jody, that you use sensitive as a positive reframing word, because I do think that it's important to recognize that being sensitive is a positive thing.
Yeah. And I was that kid. I was the introvert in class. Like, it takes me time to process. And I'm not a great collaborator. Like, I want to think about it. I want to reflect. And in those situations where we want students to collaborate, not everyone's going to respond positively to that or learn in that situation best. So really quickly, I know Heather's going to talk a little bit about universal design for learning. One of the terms around universal design for learning is learner variability. So we want to show a quick video just to kind of set the stage there and how important the relationship with teachers are.
Dear teachers, I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I really do want to listen and learn. It's just my brain is kind of different. So this is what I'd like you to know about me. I have to move, or I really can't pay attention.
Even though I'm not looking at you, I can still listen to what you're saying.
If you tell me, sit up straight, now I have to use all of my brain to do just that.
It makes me feel sad when you tell me to try harder, even though I've already tried as hard as I can. I actually listen better when I'm rocking in my chair. When you give me a bunch of directions, I start to think I will never remember all of this. Sometimes my mom or dad ends up doing all of my homework. So here's how you could maybe help. Let me get up and move while I'm learning.
Let me look wherever I want when you talk to me.
Let me rock or slouch in my chair.
No matter what, please don't take away my recess. Give me a hug I can do all by myself. Make directions very short.
Just ask me, what does your brain need right now?
And one more thing. My brain might be different than yours, but it's still amazing. Sincerely, your student.
Your student.
Your student. Your student.
And it really resonated with me when Megan was talking about participation, and that there's a variety of ways that students will participate or engage in the lesson. So understanding that because students don't come to the table at the same level, it's critical to understand like they're coming to the table and they have the ability to move and understand and to grow in their math understanding. So we think of disability through a medical model and a social model. And my last comment would be it's about not fixing the children, not fixing the child who is struggling, but it's really looking at the environment and what are the barriers in the environment that we can identify and then mitigate so that students have access. So think about ways that we can move the deficit-based thinking from the student to the environment. So when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment. And then lastly, the ASQ, which is a data gathering tool that we can learn more about our students so that when they do enter our environments, we can design the environment so that it allows for that variability of learners to enter our environments, including math instruction, and then understand who they are, understand how they learn, understand what they need in order for them to move forward from where they are to meeting those learning foundation standards.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about universal design for learning. We could do a training that lasted all day long on this alone, but we're just going to give a quick overview as far as how we might use universal design for learning in our settings in order to support all students and support math and academic skills as well as social emotional skills. So the first thing that we want to do is remember that universal design helps us remove barriers that are in the way of access for all. It's a proactive design for lessons and activities to ensure that children are gaining access to their educational materials, lessons, anything in the classroom environment or in the setting in general, regardless of their learning style, they're able to access those things. UDL isn't a curriculum, and it's really important to note that. Sometimes people will say, oh, it's just another thing to do, but UDL is a lifestyle. Kevin joked with me that eventually I would see UDL in everything if I presented on it enough. And he's right. I see it everywhere. When I walk into a classroom or any setting at all, I think, oh my gosh, what are the barriers? How can we remove those barriers? What can we do? Look at this individual child, and all they need is this little tiny tweak to the environment or addition of a support tool. And so it really is true that it's not another thing to do. It's something to support everybody. And it's definitely not the same as differentiated instruction, and it's not centered on technology. What it does is transform the power structure and education back to students. It gives them that agency and the power to decide how they're going to interact with the classroom, how they're going to interact with the activities, how they're going to interact with others, and to decide how to show that and decide how to take in the information that's being offered to them. So these are this is a CAST page. These are the UDL guidelines. This is the entire framework, and there are pieces here. They have different definitions. There are 3 principles within the guidelines of universal design for learning. Green is engagement, purple is representation, and blue is action and expression. And really the whole purpose of the UDL guidelines is to create learners, to help learners develop into purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-directed humans. And that means that they're ready for elementary school, that they're ready for college and career. That's really the whole focus, is we really want to make sure that children in our early education settings are accessing and engaging in all learning opportunities in ways that are appropriate for their individual strengths and interests, and that they're able to demonstrate what they've learned in ways that reflect their own strengths. And then you can see below here, the and beyond piece is really those higher level goals that we have for kids. And so when we look at universal design for learning, we're not just looking at what we can do now, but we're looking at the beyond piece. We're looking at their futures. They might leave us after a couple of years, but they definitely won't forget the things that we've done for them as far as planning goes. So taking a look at the first principle of universal design for learning, which is providing multiple means for engagement, what that really means is that we're addressing the area of the brain that is like the why of learning. It's about processing, it's about regulation, and it's about like that fight, flight, or freeze. So we need to engage them right away. We need to use highly preferred items, make sure that there's materials with varying levels of difficulty, and provide options for them to see feelings and emotions expressed. So you can see a few of the examples of tools on the screen right now. If you have a kiddo that loves dinosaurs, put dinosaurs in the counting area because they're going to want to count, right? They're going to want to participate if they see those dinosaurs. If you have a child who needs to work extra on their fine motor skills, make sure that you have puzzles and other fine motor tools that are appropriate for them. So here you see some knobbed puzzles as well as a jigsaw puzzle, because you have those kids that are definitely going to need that extra little push and that extra challenge as well. And then you can see the fair ways to play, how to calm down, and the feelings charts. Just make sure that there's lots of opportunities for them to access anything that is related to social and emotional regulation all over the classroom, embedded in every learning area, including the math area. So the next principle within the Universal Design for Learning guidelines is representation. This is the what. This is everything that comes in to the kids. This is everything that we put out to them as their teacher, as their caregiver. So this is really all about perception, recognition, memory, and emotions. It's that part of the brain that we're activating. And some of the ways that we can support kids in representation is by offering big books or listening stations or other ways to engage with the learning materials. We give visual and auditory transition cues. Like, how many of you have a little chime in your classrooms to let them know that it's about time for a transition? How many of you have those time timers where it doesn't just count down the time to transition, it's also got that red indicator? So there's different ways for them to receive that information about when we're going to transition. So I really love this video that I'm about to show, and it gives a perfect example of how to provide options for a child to interact with a math activity specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you real quick. Looks like it's taking some time.
Right, good job, friend. So we actually had the visuals with the numbers for students that knew their numbers and would be able to work with, let's say, multiple visuals together, because it's a busy page when you see it all together. And then on the flip side, we had it where it was just the colored square. So then children could either look at the colored square and get the concept, or they can actually match manipulatives to the colored square and be able to get the concept. So it's just giving a variety of adaptations to the curriculum so that students are able to have their needs met at their level. So as the children were coming to me at the station, I kind of knew, or I could gauge, what were they going to need. And then quickly, if I found out that, oh, this isn't working for them, I immediately, flipped it over. And it was really neat because I don't think kids even noticed that they were getting different types of curriculum at the station. They were all happy to do it together. And no matter which way it went, they were good with that.
Hi.
Oh my goodness, which one is 5? That is 5.
I love how she mentioned that the kids don't even notice that they're getting something different because they're all interacting in a way that touches on their own strengths. They're able to be so engaged with the activity in the way that's best for them that they don't notice that someone else is getting something a little different because their needs are met. And that's what this is all about, meeting their needs and allowing them to be able to show their knowledge as best they can. And that is the third principle in the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, and that is action and expression. And that really addresses the how of learning, and it's that frontal lobe, it's the higher cognitive functions, it's decision making, planning, problem solving, executive functions, all of those things that are so necessary for the more challenging pieces of academics as they get older. So certain things that we can do to support this area of learning: you provide a menu of options. These are the things that you have available to you right now so that they have that opportunity to make a choice that's best for them. Allow them to communicate their knowledge by showing. And it's just changing that verb from reading, writing, saying to showing. Because, you know, when you use the word showing, it allows them to demonstrate what they're learning and how they're taking it in many different ways, not just that one way. So even just thinking about the language around how you expect a child to demonstrate what they learn, it's really important to check on that and see if you're offering those options. And then I like to talk about scaffolding because it kind of, you get that great visual when you're working in an early childhood setting in the block area, and you have a child who's stacking and stacking and stacking, and you're providing scaffolding in certain ways. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes you're like putting your hands around it and making sure it doesn't fall, but other times you can ask those questions like, I wonder what might happen if it gets taller. I wonder what might happen if you stack a triangle on top of a square. Anything like that, that's scaffolding, and that's really getting kids to start using that higher level thinking skill about what they're doing and how they're engaging with the environment. But also, it really touches on those social, emotional pieces like, ooh, it might be frustrating if that falls down. I wonder if we can make a plan for that. And then allowing them to kind of manage that they might be feeling those feelings if it does fall down, but having a plan around in case it does. So now we're getting to the point where I just love being able to share resources. We have the Preschool Learning Foundations, and I hope that all of you are aware of the Preschool Learning Foundations and aware that they're available to you. They are for all children. They include considerations for children who are English language learners, for children with disabilities. Everything is embedded right there. And the Preschool Learning Foundations really tell you what a child should typically know and be able to do at or around 48 and 60 months of age. And it really does take into consideration that they have had a year or two of preschool, and that they're receiving appropriate support, and they're attending a high quality preschool program. And this is a fun note: high quality preschool programs and inclusive preschool programs are almost synonymous. What makes high quality is what makes inclusion work. And so that's another thing to remember. Many times when I say something like that to preschool people that I work with, early childhood people that I work with, they're like, we're already doing a lot of those things. And that is so true. And if you're using the Preschool Learning Foundations, you certainly are already implementing a lot of those high quality, inclusive practices. I did see in the chat a little bit earlier a request for the color-coded versions of the Preschool Learning Foundations, which Kevin did. That's all him. And I think the request was for volume 2. Kevin, are we through volume 1 right now?
Yeah, we're currently through volume 1. We're going to be working on volume 2.
Fantastic. And one of the reasons for kind of holding off on that is because many of you might know the Preschool Learning Foundations are currently being revised to be more inclusive of transitional kindergarten and taking into account that universal pre-kindergarten umbrella. So we'll move forward as that moves forward, and we can definitely expect to see those soon. They're not, the current version is not so different from what's going to be coming out in the new version that these aren't usable. So please don't think that you know it's going to be so different. You can continue using these up until the very second that those ones come out. So that's just a little side note. Please access the Preschool Learning Foundations, the curriculum frameworks, which is their partner, and that's really the how. So Preschool Learning Foundations tell you what kids should know, and the frameworks really help you plan those intentionally planned activities for all of those different learning domains. And you can see the little white arrow there. It's pointing at that triangle, and that triangle is the indicator for the mathematics domain in the Preschool Learning Foundations in Volume 1. And here is just a little example of the Universal Design for Learning and how it shows up in the Preschool Learning Foundations domains. And this is specific to mathematics. And it's a little fuzzy right here, but we made sure to provide it in the Padlet. And Kevin, I see, do you have anything to share about it?
Yeah, what we've done is, because Universal Design for Learning is such a critical component of providing accessible environments for students, we color coded based on the principles that Heather shared earlier. So if you see anything in green on this color coding, it means that that's an area of the foundation that is focused on engagement. So ways that we can support students in being more engaged. If it's purple, then it's a way that we have to represent information so that students understand it. So providing multiple means for students to understand what they're perceiving in the environment. And if you see anything in blue, it's around action and expression. And you'll see a lot of blue in the math learning foundations because students have to express themselves. They have to express their level of understanding of that particular concept, which then translates to the teachers to say, this is what the student understands. This is the level of understanding that the student has of that concept. That informs where I need to deliver my instruction to move them forward. So you'll see those three colors throughout the color coding around Universal Design for Learning: how we engage students, how we represent information for students to understand it, and then multiple ways for students to demonstrate their level of understanding. And students will be engaged in different ways. They need information represented in different ways, and they need options to express themselves in different ways, because as Megan said, students are going to participate, engage, need information represented, and express themselves in multiple ways. We have to provide that options for students.
Thank you, Kevin. So I've seen a couple of questions in the chat that I want to address before we move forward onto the next resource that I want to share about. Alma asked how we can purchase these books, and the best thing in the whole wide world is that you don't have to. They're available for free online. And a lot of times you can also connect with your CPIN, your local California Preschool Instructional Network coordinator or instructor, and they can also connect you with those resources. So make sure that you're aware of the different resources that are available to you in your regions, but statewide, the Preschool Learning Foundations, the curriculum frameworks, and many other early childhood supportive documents are available for free and in PDF form. So you can download them and you can have them with you at any time on your devices.
And Heather, really quick, in the chat, Carolyn placed our Connect with SIP. I see Tisha has a lot of questions, a couple questions around visually impaired. And like that's UDL. Like we have to figure out different ways for how students will engage who are blind, how we're not going to be able to give visuals for students who are blind. What are the other ways that we can represent information so that they can interact and express themselves? So our website email is in the chat. It's connect@SIP inclusion. So email us out. Same thing, Shelly, with students with autism. Tons of information around students with autism and ways that we can implement Universal Design for Learning. Go to the Captain website. Captain, the organization, it works specifically with students with autism, and they also have a connection to Universal Design for Learning for students with autism.
Yes.
Contact us through connect@SIP Inclusion.
Yes. And because the Padlet is a living document, I'll make sure to add those extra resources that we've talked about so far. It's a nice jog for my memory to remember a few things that need to be added, such as the Captain website. And thank you all so much for being partners to each other in the chat. I see you dropping links to each other, and I just appreciate that so much. So thank you very much. The next resource I wanted to highlight really quickly is the Desired Results Access Project. This is really about working with the Desired Results developmental profile for students with disabilities. It really supports planning IEP goals that align with the DRDP measures. And there are examples in the Padlet of I took an activity and I made an example of this. So I just want you to know that that's there. Same thing with the Seeds of Partnership preschool planning tool. You can choose which area of learning you want to have support planning lessons in, and it helps you walk through the types of lessons you could have, the considerations for the age groups, and it really supports with having the accommodations. It has accommodations right there for you, and it gives you a full lesson outline. So I also went through a mathematics activity, and I added a link to that in the Padlet for an example. But these are definitely resources that you want to check out because they're so helpful when you're making sure that you're using universal design to plan for all the kids in your programs. So we have officially reached the end of our presentation tonight. We have a last little slide where we can kind of sit and wait for questions. But while we're sitting and waiting for questions, I want to put a really important slide up so you all can stay connected with us. We are very active on our social media, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter/X and YouTube. So all of these you can access through the slides. They're live hyperlinks. So please access all of those areas. And I see Elizabeth, you could definitely use a 2-hour course on this topic. Yep, we spend so much of our time talking about this. Yeah, we could definitely use more time as well. But we really appreciate everyone being here with us tonight. It's so late, and boy, you are really champions, and we can tell.
And just another note, Heather is creating a webinar series that will happen around, I don't know, January, February, March, specific to UPK.
Yes.
So it'll all be out on social media, and keep a watch on our website. Yeah,
registration should be coming out soon. I'm very excited. March 12th and 14th. Mark your calendars. Supporting Inclusive Practices will have a 2-part UPK series all around playful learning and strong mathematic and literacy skills. So please keep your eyes open for that.
And all of our support, guidance, resources are at no cost since we're funded by the California Department of Education. So please reach out and let us know how we can support your efforts.
Is there something else I can help with?
We're just going to give one last thank you to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you very much for being here. And we're going to go ahead and sign off. Have a good night.